Fair day, lovely lords and ladies. Welcome to Tuesday with Tennyson, hosted by yours truly. Welcome. I don't hear my sound kicking in, so we're going to wait for a minute to see. Tuesday with Tennyson. There it is. And so we shall begin. Today's tale is Lancelot and Elaine, as recorded by Lord Tennyson, because Tuesdays are for Tennyson now. Allow me to gather myself. Shake it out. I believe I'm comfortable. So without further ado, let us begin. Elaine the fair, Elaine the lovable, Elaine, the lily maid of Astolat, high in her chamber up a tower to the east, guarded the sacred shield of Lancelot, which first she placed where morning's earliest ray might strike it, and awake her with the gleam. Then, fearing rust or soilure, fashioned for it a case of silk, and braided thereupon all the devices blazoned on the shield in their own tinnet, and added of her wit a border fantasy of branch and flower, and yellow-throated nestling in the nest. Nor rested thus content, but day by day, leaving her household and good father, climbed that eastern tower, and entering, barred her door, stripped off the case, and read the naked shield. Now guessed a hidden meaning in his arms, now made a pretty history to herself of every dint a sword had beaten on it, and every scratch a lance had made upon it, conjecturing when and where. This cut is fresh, that 10 years back, this dealt him at Carlisle, and this at Caerleon, this at Camelot. And God's mercy, what a stroke was there! And here a thrust that might have killed, but God broke the strong lance, and rolled his enemy down, and saved him. So she lived in fantasy. How came the lily maid by that good shield of Lancelot, she that know not even his name? He left it with her when he rode to tilt for the great diamond in the diamond jousts, which Arthur had ordained, and by that name had named them, since a diamond was the prize. For Arthur, long before they crowned him king, roving the trackless realms of Lyonesse, had found a glen, grey boulder and black tarn. A horror lived about the tarn, and clave like its own mists to all the mountain side. For here 2 brothers, one a king, had met and fought together, but their names were lost. And each had slain his brother at a blow, and down they fell and made the glen a board. And there they lay till all their bones were bleached, and likened into colour with their crags. And he that once was king had on a crown of diamonds, 1 in front and 4 aside. And Arthur came, and labouring upon the pass, all in a misty moonshine, unawares, had trodden that crowned skeleton and the skull, break from the nape, and from the skull the crown rolled into light, and turning on its rims, fled like a glittering rivulet to the tarn. And down the shingly scour he plunged, and caught, and set it on his head, and in his heart heard murmurs, Lo, thou likewise shalt be a king. Thereafter, when a king, he had the gems plucked from the crown, and showed them to his knights, saying, These jewels, whereupon I chance divinely, are the kingdoms, not the king's, for public use. Henceforward let there be once every year a joust for one of these. For so by 9 years' proof we needs must learn which is our mightiest, and ourselves shall grow in use of arms and manhood, till we drive the heathen, who some say shall rule the land hereafter, which God hinder. Thus he spoke, and 8 years past, 8 jousts had been, and still had Lancelot won the diamond of the year, with purpose to present them to the queen, when all were won. But meaning all at once to snare her royal fancy with a boon worth half her realm, had never spoken word. Now for the central diamond and the last and largest, Arthur, holding then his court, hard on the river nigh the place which now is the world's hugest, yet let proclaim a joust at Camelot. And when the time drew nigh, spake, for she had been sick, to Guinevere, You are so sick, my queen, you cannot move to these fair jousts. Yea, lord, she said, ye know it. Then will ye miss, he answered, the great deeds of Lancelot and his prowess in the lists, a sight ye love to look on. And the queen lifted her eyes, and they dwelt languidly on Lancelot, where he stood beside the king. He thinking that he read her meaning there, Stay with me, I am sick, my love is more than many diamonds, yielded, and a heart, love loyal to the least wish of the queen, however much he yearned to make complete the tale of diamonds for his destined boon, urged him to speak against the truth and say, Sir King, mine ancient wound is hardly whole, and lets me from the saddle. And the king glanced first at him, then her, and went his way. No sooner gone than suddenly she began, To blame, my lord Sir Lancelot, much to blame. Why go ye not to these fair jousts? The knights are half of them our enemies, and the crowd will murmur. Lo, the shameless ones, who take their pastime now, the trustful king is gone. Then Lancelot, vexed at having lied in vain, Are ye so wise? Ye were not once so wise, my queen, that summer when ye loved me first. Then of the crowd ye took no more account than of the myriad cricket of the mead, when its own voice clings to each blade of grass, and every voice is nothing. As to knights, them surely can I silence with all ease, but now my loyal worship is allowed of all men. Many a bard, without offence, has linked our names together in his lay. Lancelot, the flower of bravery, Guinevere, the pearl of beauty, and our knights at feast have pledged us in this union, while the king would listen smiling. How then, is there more? Has Arthur spoken aught? Or would yourself, now weary of my service and devour, henceforth be truer to your faultless lord? She broke into a little scornful laugh. Arthur, my lord, Arthur, the faultless king, that passionate perfection, my good lord. But who can gaze upon the sun in heaven? He never spake word of reproach to me. He never had a glimpse of mine untruth. He cares not for me. Only here today there gleamed a vague suspicion in his eyes. Some meddling rogue has tampered with him, else wrapped in this fancy of his table round, and swearing men to vows impossible to make them like himself. But friend to me, he is all fault who hath no fault at all. For who loves me must have a touch of earth. The low sun makes the color. I am yours, not Arthur's, as ye know, save by the bond. And therefore hear my words. Go to the jousts. The tiny trumpeting gnat can break our dream when sweetest, and the vermin voices here may buzz so loud, we scorn them, but they sting. Then answered Lancelot, the chief of knights, And with that face, after my pretext made, shall I appear, O queen, at Camelot, I before a knight who honours his own word as if it were God's. Yea, said the queen, a moral child without the craft to rule, else had he not lost me. But listen to me, if I must find you wit. We hear it said that men go down before your spear at a touch, but knowing you are Lancelot, your great name this conquers. Hide it, therefore. Go unknown. Win. By this kiss you will, and our true king will then allow your pretext, O my knight, as all for glory. For to speak him true, ye know right well how meek soever he seem, no keener hunter after glory breathes. He loves it in his knights more than himself. They prove to him his work, win, and return. Then got Sir Lancelot suddenly to horse, wroth at himself, not willing to be known. He left the barren beaten thoroughfare, chose the green path that showed the rarer foot, and there among the solitary downs, full often lost in fancy, lost his way. Till as he traced a faintly shadowed track, that all in loops and links among the dales ran to the castle of Astolat. He saw, fired from the west, far on a hill, the towers. Thither he made and wound the gateway horn. Then came an old, dumb, myriad-wrinkled man, who let him into lodging and disarmed. And Lancelot marvelled at the wordless man, and issuing found the Lord of Astolat with two strong sons, Sir Torre and Sir Lavaine, moving to meet him in the castle court, and close behind them stepped the lily maid, Elaine, his daughter. Mother of the house there was not. Some light jest among them rose with laughter, dying down as the great knight approached them. Then the Lord of Astolat: "Whence comest thou, my guest, and by what name livest between the lips? For by thy state and presence I might guess thee chief of those, after the king, who eat in Arthur's halls. Him have I seen, the rest, his table round, known as they are, to me they are unknown." Then answered Lancelot, the chief of knights: "Known am I, and of Arthur's hall, and known, what I by mere mischance have brought, my shield. But since I go to joust as one unknown at Camelot for the diamond, ask me not, hereafter you shall know me. And this shield, I pray you lend me one, if such you have, blank, or at least with some devices not mine." Then said the Lord of Astolat: "Here is Torres. Hurt in his first tilt was my son, Sir Torre, and so, God wot, his shield is blank enough. His ye can have." Then added plain Sir Torre: "Yea, since I cannot use it, ye may have it." Here laughed the father, saying, "Fie, Sir Churl, is that an answer for a noble knight? Allow him but Lavaine, my younger here, he is so full of lustihood, he will ride, joust for it, and win, and bring it in an hour, and set it in this damsel's golden hair, to make her thrice as wilful as before." "Nay, father, nay, good father, shame me not before this noble knight," said young Lavaine. "For nothing, surely I but played on Torre. He seemed so sullen, vexed he could not go. A jest, no more. For night the maiden dream that some would put his diamond in her hand, and that it was too slippery to be held, and slipped and fell into some pool over stream, the castle well belike. And then I said that if I went and if I fought and won it, but all was jest and joke among ourselves, then must she keep it safelier. All was jest. But father give me leave, and if he will, to ride to Camelot with this noble knight. Win shall I not, but do my best to win. Young as I am, yet would I do my best." "So ye will grace me," answered Lancelot, smiling a moment, "with your fellowship over the waste downs whereupon I lost myself. Then were I glad of you as guide and friend. And you shall win this diamond, as I hear. It is a fair large diamond, if ye may, and yield it to this maiden, if ye will." "A fair and large diamond," added plain Sir Torre. "Such be for queens and not for simple maids." Then she, who held her eyes upon the ground, Elaine, and heard her name so tossed about, flushed slightly at the slight disparagement before the stranger knight, who, looking at her, full courtly, yet not falsely, thus returned: "If what is fair be but for what is fair, and only queens are to be counted so, rash were my judgment then, who deemed this maid might wear as fair a jewel as is on earth, not violating the bond of like to like." He spoke and ceased. The lily maid Elaine, won by the mellow voice before she looked, lifted her eyes and read his lineaments. The great and guilty love he bare the queen, in battle with the love he bare his lord, had marred his face and marked it ere his time. Another sinning on such heights with one, the flower of all the West and all the world, had been the sleeker for it. But in him his mood was often like a fiend, and rose and drove him into wastes and solitudes for agony, who was yet a living soul. Marred as he was, he seemed the goodliest man that ever among ladies ate in hall, and noblest when she lifted up her eyes. However marred, of more than twice her years, seemed with an ancient sword cut on the cheek, And bruised and bronzed, she lifted up her eyes and loved him with that love which was her doom. Then the great knight, the darling of the court, loved of the loveliest, into the rude hall stepped with all grace, and not with half disdain, hid under grace, as in a smaller time, but kindly man moving among his kind, whom they with meats and vintage of their best, and talk, and minstrel melody entertained. And much they asked of court and table round, and ever well and readily answered he. But Lancelot, when they glanced at Guinevere, suddenly speaking of the wordless man, heard from the baron that 10 years before the heathen caught and reft him of his tongue. He learned and warned me of their fierce design against my house, and him they caught and maimed. But I my sons and little daughter fled from bonds or death, and dwelt among the woods by the great river in a boatman's hut. Dull days were those, till our good Arthur broke the pagan yet once more on Badon Hill. "Oh, there, great lord, doubtless," Lavaine said, rapt by all the sweet and sudden passion of youth towards greatness in its elder. "You have fought. Oh, tell us, for we live apart. You know of Arthur's glorious wars." And Lancelot spoke, and answered him at full, as having been with Arthur in the fight which all day long rang by the white mouth of the violent glen, and in the 4 wild battles by the shore of Douglas, that on Bassa, then the war that thundered in and out of the gloomy skirts of Celadon the forest, and again by Castle Guernion, where the glorious king had on his surcease worn Our Lady's head, carved of one emerald, centered in a sun of silver rays that lightened as he breathed. And at Caerleon he had helped his lord, when the strong neighings of the wild white horse set every gilded parapet shuddering. And up in Agnid Cathragonian too, and down the waste sand shores of I don't know that word, when many a heathen fell. And on the mount of Badon I myself beheld the king charge at the head of all his table round, and all his legions crying Christ and him, and break them. And I saw him after stand high upon a heap of slain, from spur to plume, red as the rising sun with heathen blood. And seeing me, with a great voice he cried, they are broken, for the king." However mild he seemed at home, nor cares for triumph in our mimic wars, the jousts, for if his own knight cast him down, he laughs, saying, his knights are better men than he. Yet in his heathen war the fire of God fills him. I never saw his like, there lives no greater leader. While he uttered this, low to her own heart said the lily maid, "Save your great self, fair lord." And when he fell from talk of war to traits of pleasantry, being mirthful he but in a stately kind, she still took note that when the living smile died from his lips, across him came a cloud of melancholy severe, from which again, whenever in her hovering to and fro, the lily maid had striven to make him cheer, there brake a sudden beaming tenderness of manners and of nature, and she thought that all was nature, all perchance for her. And all night long his face before her lived, as when a painter, poring on a face, divinely through all hindrance finds the man behind it, and so paints him that his face, the shape and color of a mind and life, lives for his children, ever at his best and fullest. So the face before her lived, dark, splendid, speaking in the silence, full of noble things, and held her from her sleep, till wraith she rose, half cheated in the thought she needs must bid farewell to sweet Lavaine. First, as in fear, step after step, she stole down the long tower stairs, hesitating. Anon she heard Sir Lancelot cry in the court, "This shield, my friend, where is it?" And Lavaine passed inward as she came from out the tower. There to his proud horse Lancelot turned, and smoothed the glossy shoulder, humming to himself. Half envious of the flattering hand, she drew nearer and stood. He looked, and more amazed than if 7 men had set upon him, saw the maiden standing in the dewy light. He had not dreamed she was so beautiful. Then came on him a sort of sacred fear, for silent though he greeted her, she stood, wrapped on his face as if it were a god's. Suddenly flashed on her a wild desire that he should wear her favor at the tilt. She braved a riotous heart in asking for it. Fair lord, whose name I know not, noble it is, I well believe the noblest. Will you wear my favor at this tourney? Nay, said he, fair lady, since I never yet have worn favor of any lady in the lists. Such is my want, as those who know me know. Yea, so, she answered. Then in wearing mine needs must be lesser likelihood, noble lord, that those who know should know you. And he turned her counsel up and down within his mind, and found it true, and answered, True, my child. Well, I will wear it. Fetch it out to me. What is it? And she told him, a red sleeve broidered with pearls, and brought it. Then he bound her token on his helmet with a smile, saying, I never yet have done so much for any maiden living, said the blood sprang to her face and filled her with delight, but left her all the paler when Lavaine returning brought the yet unblazoned shield, his brother's, which he gave to Lancelot, who parted with his own to fair Elaine. Do me this grace, my child, to have my shield in keeping till I come. A grace to me, she answered. Twice today I am your squire. Whereat Lavaine said, laughing, Lily Maid, for fear our people call you Lily Maid in earnest, let me bring you color back. Once, twice, and thrice, now get you hence to bed. So kissed her, and Sir Lancelot his own hand, and thus they moved away. She stayed a minute, then made a sudden step to the gate, and there, her bright hair flown about the serious face, yet rosy kindled with her brother's kiss, paused in the gateway, standing by the shield in silence, while she watched their arms far off sparkle until they dipped below the downs. Then to her tower she climbed and took the shield, there kept it, and so lived in fantasy. Meanwhile, the new companions passed away far over the long backs of the bushless downs, to where Sir Lancelot knew there lived a knight not far from Camelot, now for 40 years a hermit, who had prayed, labored, and ever laboring, had scooped himself in the white rock a chapel and a hall on massive columns, like a shore cliff cave, and cells and chambers. All were fair and dry. The green light from the meadows underneath struck up and lived along the milky roofs, and in the meadows tremulous aspen trees and poplars made a noise of falling showers, and thither wending there that night they bode. But when the next day broke from underground, and shot red fire and shadow through the cave, they rose, heard mass, broke fast, and rode away. Then Lancelot saying, Here, but hold my name hidden, you ride with Lancelot of the Lake. Abashed, Lavaine, whose instant reverence dearer to true young hearts than their own praise, but left him leave to stammer, Is it indeed? And after muttering, The great Lancelot, at last he got his breath and answered, One I have seen, that other, our liege lord, the dread Pendragon, Britain's king of kings, of whom the people talk mysteriously. He will be there. Then were I stricken blind that minute I might say that I had seen. So spoke Lavaine, and when they reached the lists by Camelot in the meadow, let his eyes run through the peopled gallery, which half round lay like a rainbow fallen upon the grass, until they found the clear-faced king, who sat robed in red samite, easily to be known, since to his crown the golden dragon clung, and down his robe the dragon writhed in gold, and from the carven work behind him crept 2 dragons gilded, sloping down to make arms for his chair, while all the rest of them, through knots and loops and folds innumerable, fled ever through the woodwork, till they found the new design wherein they lost themselves. Yet with all ease, so tender was the work. and in the costly canopy over him set blazed the last diamond of the nameless king. Then Lancelot answered young Lavaine and said, Me you call great, mine is the firmer seat, the truer lance, but there is many a youth now crescent who will come to all I am and overcome it, and in me there dwells no greatness, save it to be some far off touch of greatness, to know well I am not great. There is the man. And Lavaine gaped upon him as on a thing miraculous, and anon the trumpets blew, and then did either side, they that assailed, and they that held the lists, set lance in rest, strike spur, suddenly move, meet in the mists, and there so furiously shock that a man far off might well perceive, if any man that day were left afield, the hard earth shake and a low thunder of arms, and Lancelot bowed a little, till he saw which were the weaker, then he hurled into it against the stronger. Little need to speak of Lancelot and his glory. King, duke, earl, count, baron, whom he smote, he overthrew. But in the field were Lancelot's kith and kin, ranged with the table round that held the lists, strong men and wrathful that a stranger knight should do and almost overdo the deeds of Lancelot. And one said to the other, Lo, what is he? I do not mean the force alone, the grace and versatility of the man. Is it not Lancelot? When has Lancelot worn favour of any lady in the lists? Not such his wont as we that know him know. How then? Who then? A fury seized on them, a fiery family passion for the name of Lancelot, and a glory one with theirs. They couched their spears and pricked their steeds, and thus, their plumes driven backwards by the wind, they made in moving, altogether down upon him bare, as a wild wave in the wide North Sea, green glimmering